Welcome, everyone. My name is Sean Shaw, and this is Vanguards of Democracy. On today's show, I have a critically important story to bring to you all about infant formula and organ failure in prematurely born babies. It's a really important and shocking topic that I want to talk about today, and I've invited Liz Zwibel, Stephen Reck, and Jose Rojas to the studio today. They are wonderful lawyers, and they're going to detail some of what they've learned and how new or expecting mothers can protect their children from this risk. But first, I'm here with Maya Brown, political campaign mastermind and close personal friend of the show, someone who worked on campaigns that I've had, and if I have one in the future, she'll be the first one I call. And she's going to dissect what separates a great campaign from a dud. That starts right now, so stay tuned. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Sean Shaw with Vanguards of Democracy, and I want to say a few things before we introduce my next guest. It's someone that I know you all are familiar with. I've had her on my radio show before, but I want her to come back and talk a little bit more about politics and redistricting and what's going on now. And she's someone that is special to me, not only professionally and personally. She's a superstar, and that's Maya Brown. But I want to say some things because I can't help but rant right now. Number one, it is Founders Day today. We're shooting these out of order a little bit, but I do want to say Happy Founders Day to my fellow members of Omega Sci-Fi and Rue to the good bros. I got to say that on the video, so I appreciate all the brothers and the galas and the founders activities that I did this past weekend and this week. Had a great time fellowshipping. Number two, here in Hillsborough County, we have a redistricting process going on. Redistricting is simply the process by which boundaries are drawn to determine who represents who. And so there's been some kind of conflict between various maps and whose map is better for what population. That's fine. We can argue about that. But one particularly galling thing that's happened is one of the county commissioners, who is a Republican and who has not been a supporter of the black community in any fashion, last night had the nerve to try to climb on the cross and talk about how he supported all the black preachers that were there and that all the black community was there and that he supported their wishes and he was with them. It's because he liked the same map that these black people were there testifying for. And again, we can disagree about the maps. What we can't disagree about is that this same commissioner was against removing a Confederate monument from outside of the Hillsborough County Courthouse. This same commissioner supported a Confederate sympathizer to be on the diversity council for the county. And this same commissioner ain't done a damn thing for black folks as long as he's been there that I'm aware of. And I like to think I'm pretty plugged in. So for him to suggest that he wanted to support the wishes of the black community simply because it protects the boundaries of his seat better was not only hypocritical, it was galling, it was awful, it was distasteful, it was disgusting, and I just couldn't help but rant today before we get to my guest. So now that I've got that out the way and I get back in a better mood. Maya, let's talk about Maya. Maya Brown was my political director when I ran for Attorney General. She has, even before that, she was running races here in Hillsborough County. But Maya is one of the few African-American women who has been political director on a statewide campaign here in Florida. In fact, she might be the only one that I'm aware of to date. But she got that job not because she was black, she got it because she was good. And she's been good ever since then, and I continue to work with her every time I can. Whenever someone asks me who they ought to hire to do something, I tell them if I run for office again, Maya's going to be one of the first calls I make. And if I happen to do that in the near future, which seems like the possibilities may be arising, Maya is someone that I'm going to call. I have that much confidence in her. She's a superstar. She's amazing. And she's right here next to me. Maya, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
Sean, it's so good to see you and be hanging out with you. It's like the dynamic duo is back together again. I'm excited
and
about
dressed
that.
up.
I know.
During the day.
Right? Yeah, I love this. Thanks for having me.
I'm happy to have you. And I meant all those things you said. It's hard to find people that are not only talented but loyal. And like never forgot kind of the community, because a lot of times you can do this and you get so kind of high and you've been doing this in politics and you forget home and forget where you came from, and you don't do that. It's one of the reasons you're involved in so many things.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's exactly why I do this work, right? Like we get into politics, at least we should, because we want to actually make a difference in the communities, change the lives, of Floridians. And that's what inspires me every day to wake up and do this, especially in light of all the awful things we sometimes see coming out of Tallahassee.
Well, and it's not just Tallahassee, right? I mean, obviously Tallahassee is trash. That is like the famous Sean Shaw statement. But we're the Marbury trial is going
yeah.
on right now. The trial for in Kenosha is going on right now. And those kind of things remind you why you do this work.
That's right.
At least it reminds me, and I know you too. What are you doing these days? Just so the audience knows, what do you do?
So
what's a consultant?
So what is a consultant? Great question. I think it's depending on who you're asking. But for me, my practice as a political consultant is to do a couple things. One, if you're thinking about running for office, you call me and I help build.
And we go talk about that.
Your winning strategy. That's right. And then also, if you're thinking about doing some advocacy work, either in Tallahassee or your local government, I can help you put that together from a messaging framework, pulling together the strategy of stakeholders to get bought in. And then I think the third thing is too, like, how do we build and have tough conversations around tough issues, right? Like, how are we building together winning messages that can actually help move the needle across Florida? And so that's what I do every day. And it's been an honor to do this work. I went out on my own right after we did work together in 2018 and have been in business for about 2 years now. And we're growing. It's a Black woman-owned firm. And
by we, that means you got people working with you.
Yeah.
That means you a boss.
Yesterday was National Entrepreneur Day, and so very excited about what's happening and continuing to grow and try to make good trouble here.
I hope you have time for the people that helped you along the way.
We're on TV.
I want you to run through your bio a little bit too, because I don't think people understand the steps it takes to get where you are now. People like to get to the finish line, right? I want to run for office, or I want to be a lobbyist, or I want to be a consultant. Talk about, and I mean all the way from college to kind of where you got now, so you can be this entrepreneur and have your own business in the consulting world. Because this is let me say this: politics is extremely cutthroat.
Oh yeah,
it's not just about the profits. It is about the relationships and everybody coming for your neck and the competition between people. It's a tough business.
It is.
And the running for office part is what I am more involved in, and that's tough. But the consulting
and the operative class,
having to elbow people all the time is hard too. But tell us your journey and how you got to where you are now. I think people would be interested to know what it takes to get there.
Sure. So I always tell folks all the time, I was never like, hey, I'm going to be in politics. I never, wanted to be president of the United States. I just wanted to specifically help Black people, right? And so the shorter version of this story is I grew up in Volusia County in a small city called DeLand, and I can recall like applying to USF, I think haphazardly because some of my friends were doing it and got a full ride to go to USF. That's how I wound up in Tampa. And at that time, I was really thinking about how I can make the biggest impact to Black and brown people, and thought I wanted to be a teacher, come from a long line of educators who were union members, and thought that's what I wanted to do. But I realized the way to make greater impact is through government, right? Like they're the folks who create our laws, our politicians, things like that from every level of government. And that was my question. Okay, if I want to get involved in government, what does that look like? I'm a very proud USF alum. It's because of that institution that really helped me open my eyes and get my first shot at politics. I was in a program called the Tallahassee Internship program that my advisor told me about. During college, I was a junior, I believe, in at USF, that took 12 students that applied, moved us up to Tallahassee for 60 days, and we got a firsthand look at what was going on.
Lord.
It was, so imagine 20-year-old me.
Good Lord.
Bright-eyed, ready to conquer the world, and then you get thrust into the Capitol, and it's completely different, right?
It's different than what they put in the books,
That's right. Oh, and on TV sometimes. And so I'm just so appreciative that I had an internship placement that allowed me to not just print copies and, be a paper pusher, but actually threw me into have conversations with legislators, actually draft bills. And so that's what's really leveled my foundation and actually gave me the political bug. What's important though was that was in 2014 and it's 2021 now, right? Like almost 10 years of work. And since that process, it has been a lot of small campaigns, big campaigns, go work in a government office, right? Because one thing I realized very early as a Black woman, as a young Black woman in this space, is that I had to be good at everything so I could get hired and wouldn't get fired, right? And so my strategy is not just to learn how to do direct voter contact. How do I become good at fundraising? Like all of the components of campaign work so that I am duly qualified not to be, one, pigeonholed, but also to be qualified for whatever job. And so then, like I said, once I kind of got the hang of the campaign stuff on each cycle, the other piece is going to work on the official side for some folks. I had the chance to work for State Attorney Warren when he got elected, and then also Commissioner Overman here in Hillsborough, which actually helps us put into practice, the things we preach on the campaign trail. And so that's the formula. And I know we're going to talk about this. You tell folks what you're going to do, you get elected, and you do it, and then you go back and tell them what you did, right? And so that's what I wanted to learn is like, how do you actually produce and deliver on those solutions? And I think that's kind of, allowed me to get to this place of having this firm, because folks know that we are talented and that we know what we're here to do and that we can actually deliver winning strategies no matter what.
It is hard to get the requisite opportunities so that then you can have the resume that will be considered for the big one.
That's right.
And I always say it's up to candidates to be very intentional about what your staff diversity looks like. And when we were running for Attorney General, I told my people, if I'm not giving Black staff members a shot, who is?
Mm-hmm.
I'm the Black person running statewide. If I ain't going to do it, then what are we doing here? So I was intentional not only about hiring diversity, but I knew that we were going to give some people their first shot at this job, and that it was going to be, I was going to have to override maybe some people say, well, we got all these resumes of people that have been political directors before. And I knew that in some of these instances, if I was going to hire Black people of color in general, they were going to have to, this was going to be their first shot.
That's right.
And I was familiar with you. I was familiar with all your work. And one of the reasons I hired you is because of just what you said. You were good at everything. And you just happened to work in political because that's where we needed you, but you were good at it all. I'll tell y'all what that meant for my campaign. Maya was in charge of talking to anyone that wanted to yell about how trash I was, that wanted me to come speak to them, that was mad because I couldn't visit their town tomorrow with 24-hour notice, and just was talking to everyone. And I was comfortable allowing Maya to, if you spoke to Maya, you were speaking to me. And that's only because I had the comfort level with Maya that she was going to say what she needed to say and I was going to be represented well. Sometimes you don't have that. Sometimes there's a buffer between you right. and then the manager and that man. But I knew that you were going to serve me well, and you did, and that's why we got you. But this was your first time on a statewide campaign.
That's right.
You had the right experience doing things before, and I wanted to hire someone. It was their first time, and it worked. And now you got that on your resume, but that is how this has to happen.
Absolutely. That's the only way these opportunities happen, right? And everybody complains, and rightfully so, like for the last 20 years, Florida, Republicans have been in power. And I think we have to ask intentionally, why is that, right? Are we still running the same candidates? Probably. Are we still using the same operatives? Probably. And until we break in and are intentional about training new classes, of operatives, that's the only way we're going to get new people and new ideas.
One of my mentors gave me my shot, gave me a job that I wasn't on paper ready to have. Mm-hmm. But she had confidence in me, and my first entry was working for her at a high level, and I like to think I made it okay. And so that is how you do this, right? That's right. And that's how you get new people. And I know it is very hard for not only people of color, but women of color to get that shot because everybody wants to use the same person they've always used.
That's right.
Or everybody wants to use the same person. If I go right now and say I'm running for XYZ, give me some resumes, I'm going to get the same 5 resumes if I ask that same question 2 years from now.
That's right.
And that's what kind of the issue is here.
That's right. That's right.
What projects are you working on now, though?
So, what's great about this cycle is that so many folks are filing and announcing early, which is a complete difference from what usually happens in Florida, where folks, file in the same year. So I have a couple state legislative races here in Tampa Bay, working on some municipal races down in South Florida, which is great. And then also doing some work with some issue-based campaigns, right? Like, how are we talking about issues? If there's going to be some stuff on the constitutional amendment, that's going to be on the ballot. So we're beginning to pull that together. And then also the really big project I'm working on right now is redistricting in the legislature. Proud to be a part of that lobby team, but because the census delays for COVID, the redistricting process in Florida has been delayed. And so it wasn't until last week that we got the first iteration of maps. And so as you previously explained, what happens is the census, takes into account population changes. And then what's supposed to happen, right, is that our legislative districts are supposed to reflect those changes for equitable representation. And so what happens now, because of the imbalance of power, is that we have to make sure that one partisan group is not making lines to favor themselves. And so I'm a part of the lobby team that's going to be doing some deep analysis to make sure that happens. So we're in the throes of that right now.
And it's the most important thing going on, not only at the state level, but at the local level. Like I told you when I ranted here earlier, we're drawing school board maps, we're drawing county commissioner maps, we're drawing state senate, state legislative maps, we're drawing congressional maps.
That's right.
So all the way from Congress all the way down to school board, we're drawing maps, new maps because of population changes, people move, and and for example, where it gets really dicey is a whole bunch of black people used to live in neighborhood X. And now neighborhood X is no longer a black community, neighborhood Y is. So now the maps have to reflect that migration because the person that represented neighborhood X was probably African American, and now we got to make sure that we keep certain African American representation at all levels, and it gets really tricky to try to predict movement and give credit. For example, I live in Seminole Heights, and the gentrification and the movement of different people in and out of Seminole Heights is probably one of the biggest in Tampa in terms of who lives there now versus who might live there tomorrow versus who lived there yesterday. And so it affects who represents those areas, and it's super important. And obviously it's political, so it's contentious.
That's right.
And so we got to fight about it.
That's right. And it's not just the partisanship that's contentious. Like a lot of people want to cover their own, right? Like a lot of elected officials want to make sure they have a job to come back to, but you were elected by the community. And so you need to go back out there and ask the community to reelect you and do what's in the best interest of the people to make sure that there is fair and equitable representation at all levels of government.
It's very hard for some politicians to do that, right?
Oh, yeah.
I hear you. We ain't going to say no names, though, because we're not petty.
That's right.
During the Thanksgiving season. Now, when we get to the new year, and we get to January, I may get petty, but right now we are in the Thanksgiving. And you got a new
Christmas studio. We can't be petty in the studio.
That's why we got this new studio, so I can be new petty. We don't want to be old petty. But look, I've got a question here, and I'm going to ask you because I bet I know who the first answer is. It better be me, but I want to know who the second answer is. What campaigns are you most proud of working on? Okay. Give your number 2 after the Sean Shaw campaign.
Well, I have to give Sean Shaw his credit, right? And it's very hard for me to do that for many reasons. But no, seriously, like I wouldn't be where I am without of his help and his support, right? Like to his credit, like I certainly was able to take all the yelling and screaming phone calls from folks across the state of Florida, but he also trusted me to go out on his behalf and share his message. And you can't just give that responsibility to anyone, right?
I don't trust everybody to do that.
Listen, and now, if Sean Shaw ever runs again, and Sean Shaw can start speaking right now, and I'd probably tell you what he's about to say. Like that's
we have spent a lot of time listening to me give speeches. I know.
And so, but I think that's super important, right? Like Sean would be in Pensacola, and I'd be in Lake County, and we'd be delivering the same message. But like, what a grave responsibility to go in and say, like, I'm representing the first Black Democratic nominee for Attorney General in Florida. So thank you so much for that.
No, you're welcome. I still have people to this day that compliment you on your appearances on my behalf. Someone asked me to give a speech, I think in Sarasota, and the way they tried to remind me who they were is they were like, "Do you remember that group that you sent Maya to go speak for on your behalf?" I was like, "You got to be more specific," because Maya did a lot of speaking on behalf of the campaign. But I love you, Maya, and I have the utmost confidence in you professionally and personally, and that's why you're going to be great at this. I just, it's so important that the candidates are intentional about this, particularly because this is hard. Even if you're a Black candidate, you're going to get pressure to not do it. You're going to get pressure to hire the same people. You're going to get pressure to hire the same consultant, and you have to step out of the box and say, no, this is who I'm hiring for this job.
Absolutely.
I got pressure that same way, and it worked out well, I think, with the people we got. I want to talk real quick now. We got about 5 minutes left.
Uh-oh.
Everybody wants to run for office. Everybody that's crazy wants to run for office, right? And because a lot of people say, they'll come and they'll get in front of me. It's like, I want to run for office. Mm-hmm. And they don't have anything else besides that. What are the steps to take if you want to run for office? There are certain steps that are common to all offices, no matter what you're running for. I want to run for office, Maya. What are the first 3 things that I need to do in your opinion?
Sean, anyone who tells me that they want to run for office, I ask them a question back and say, do you want to just run for office? Do you want to win? Or do you want to solve people's problems? And I hope that they can answer the last two questions together, and those answers are yes. If those are yes, then absolutely I'll be happy to work with you. But some folks just want to run for their own ego boost. They just want to run to, get their name and faces out there. And that's not why public service was crafted, right? Like, we were here to actually be in service of others. And so if I get the stench that that's all they want to do, like, those aren't my people, and, I don't want to invest my time and energy into that kind of work. But if they do actually want to solve people's problems, I think the first thing you have to sit with is, what problems do you want to solve? Too often folks just kind of file because of what they think happens at that level of government. But they have to be really clear about, hey, I want to, make sure that women have access to reproductive justice and care, right? But then they file to run for city council. Like, those two things don't match up.
Well, the advice you're giving is what I give. Run for the office you want to run for, not the one that's open.
That's right.
Like, if you have to wait years for the one you want, that's okay.
That's right. Because you're going to be very upset sitting in zoning meetings, and you're not talking about that too.
Because politics is hard enough, and you're not running for the one you want.
That's right. And talking about issues that don't matter to what you do. Exactly. So,
and people going to pick up on it.
Bingo. And so I think the other piece is you should start running for office the minute you think you want to do it, right?
Talk about the work.
So your work starts well before your name appears on a ballot. You should be engaged in your community. What organizations are you participating in? What turkeys are you passing out, right, during Thanksgiving season? What back-to-school drives are you doing? And I think what's important to tell folks is that it's not that you have to be the organizer or the leader of these things, but how are you showing up in service?
First time people hear your name should not be as a candidate for office.
That's right. That's right. But you should have been doing the work already. One, because folks in the community can identify and endorse the fact and the work that you're doing. So you got to do that. If that isn't there already, then we got problems.
And that doesn't matter what office you're running for.
It doesn't matter
if
what
you're
office.
You're not doing work in the community. Nobody wants to hear it.
You could be running for dog catcher.
When people come to me, I literally, if I don't know your name already or I don't know something, I'll ask, like, what are you doing?
That's right.
And if specifically, people often will come and say, I want to run for the legislature. And I will say, what church are you a member of?
That's right.
What neighborhood association you're a member of? Are you a member of a fraternity or sorority? What do you do? I'll ask all these questions, and usually the answers won't be sufficient. And I will say, this is you've got to have answers to this prior to coming in here and asking if I will help you do X, Y, Z.
That's right.
And I know we're going to get to the money next, but the work is so important. People can sniff it out in a minute.
That's
Voters are smarter than politicians give them credit for. They can sniff out in a minute when you're just running for office because it's the next thing you think you ought to be doing.
That's right.
Or you just want to be the honorable. Or you just want to get tickets to the Gators game, even though the Gators aren't doing good. They can sniff it out in a minute.
That's right. And what's important, I think, to that is that we're seeing that in election results now, right? Yep. Because as Democrats, we are losing because we aren't actually solving people's problems. And so we need to make sure that we have folks that have a proven track record of getting things done in the community and then also understands the plight of the folks that they want to represent.
Now y'all know why I let Maya speak on my behalf. Sometimes she's better than me, particularly in these churches. Talk about the money. Because I know everybody wants to run for office, and then when you start talking about campaign money, people get a little weird and skittish, and they tell me, people tell me, it's not all about money, Sean.
That's what they say.
Okay,
that's what the people say.
You came to see me, so excuse me for giving you advice, but
listen,
talk about the money.
And it's tough, and it's a hard thing. It's a hard pill to swallow that money plays such a large role in politics. But it does. But it does, and that's the reality. And so either you step up to the plate and raise the money, or you go home and lose.
You don't have to raise the most money.
That's right.
You have to raise satisfactory money, right? So you got to raise enough to win. You don't have to outraise everybody, but you got to raise enough.
And what is important is it's not just having money to have money. It's having money to communicate your message. And I think a lot of people get confused, like, okay, well, why do you have all this money? And it's like, okay, TV costs money. Those things you get in the mail cost money.
Radio costs money.
All of it. And it's expensive.
Listen, I know if the black folks want these T-shirts and signs.
And church fans.
That costs money.
Yep.
Church shirts. I can't tell you how much money I've spent on campaign T-shirts.
That's right.
Years.
And yard signs.
Because you're better.
That's right.
Because people want them. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. No, but that's the main thing. Like, you have to make sure that you have enough money to get your message out there through all these different mediums, and make sure you hire a consultant that can actually deliver a winning message to the right folks.
What does the mail piece say?
That's right.
How many mail pieces should you send? when do you send them?
And to who?
What population receives what mail piece?
That's right.
How much are you spending on signs? When do your signs go up? Are you on the radio? Or all these decisions you need someone to help you make, and it's someone like Maya that would help you do that. But they all depend on if you can raise the money, because you ain't got no money.
Yeah.
Not only are you not putting those things out, you don't need to hire a consultant. You strike.
And
Right?
you can't
got
afford
money
it.
to
Yeah,
spend.
that's right. And I think what's important is that like the first batch of folks who should be giving to your campaign are friends and family, right? Like they're the ones who should be believing in you and your
Don't run
dream.
for office until you've got, whatever the raise, whether it's 10,000 that you can raise immediately, 25,000, 100,000,
right.
$500,000 to raise for the big ones. You need to have that first set.
That's right.
Set.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, and so we have to make sure that we have money to spend it well, to make sure that we're getting out the vote. And then the next piece is like, what does the timeline look like? All of those things fire on different cylinders, sometimes at the same time. But at the end of the day we're working towards is election day. And that's the last day you can, give it all and leave it all on the field. And so that strategy has to make sure it's taking into account all the pieces of the campaign, the finance, the comms, whether it's digital, making sure that you actually have a good operation, because a lot of folks just be doing stuff.
No,
and it's so many pieces. And I think it's important that if you are serious about running for public office, that you do some soul searching, because it's hard.
It is.
And
it's hard.
it takes a lot of sacrifice, right? They call it public service for a reason.
I tell people your family's running
That's
if you're
right.
running.
And there's this new level of visibility, right, that you don't necessarily get to hide behind anymore, because you're opening yourself up to that, right or wrong sometimes.
Right.
But I do think that the other piece is do your research on good consultants. Like, take a look at winning campaigns. Like, what did you like? And figure out who the team was and go from there. And I'm sure there's very few, but there are some good folks in this process who are operatives and consultants that want to see you win.
No, I agree. Maya, thank you, as always, for coming here
It's my honor.
to share this knowledge and answer the phone when I call you in a month, because we're going to be talking about some stuff.
I'm excited.
Everybody will get that on the way home, and what I'm saying. But
Florida.
I just want to tell you thank you. I want you to sign this headshot, if you will, so you can go on the wall of honor.
Oh, snap.
Yeah,
Okay.
look at you.
I love this.
No, thank you. And thank you. And listen, Maya didn't say this, but if you're thinking about running for office, this is ought to be one of the first people you call, particularly in the Hillsborough area, just to get good advice and all that stuff. So thank you for coming, and we'll be in touch.
I appreciate it.
All
Thank
right.
y'all.
Thank you. We are here with the second segment of Vanguards of Democracy. I'm Sean Shaw. Thank you for joining us. First segment was on politics, and so we're going to move into a much more serious topic today, right now, for the second segment, and that is the tragic, unfortunate connection between certain infant formula and organ failure in premature babies. And we're joined here by some really good lawyers that know a lot about this, and I want to make sure that you're armed with all the knowledge that you need to make the decisions you need to give you the comfort you need in this topic, because this is scary stuff. We don't want to freak you out, but we do want to make sure that you are aware of some potential issues here. So I want to make sure that we get you all that information, tell you who you need to contact if you think you might be a victim of this, and let you know that there are some lawyers out there that are currently working on this to hold people accountable on this. So I want the lawyers here to introduce themselves. I know we got some great lawyers with us before we get into this.
Thank you, Sean. My name's Stephen M. Reck, and I'm with a law firm of Levin, Rojas, Camisar, and Reck. Basically, our law firm was started in order to assist the premature infants who are unfortunately getting this horrible disease called necrotizing enterocolitis from consuming cow's milk baby formula. So basically, our law firm was started for this sole purpose. And I want to thank Liz Zwibel for inviting us here to be with you today.
Thank you, Stephen. And I'm here with Jose as well, his partner. And we're just so excited to have you here, because you are really a champion when it comes to these premature babies' rights. And you are here to hold companies accountable. And a lot of people don't know what's been happening with infant formula. And that's why this type of segment is so vital and so important.
It is. And, Stephen gave me the opportunity to get involved in this litigation. It's really been the honor of my career, because I really think we're going to make an important difference here. We're already starting to see a difference. We're starting to see some changes by the manufacturers. And most importantly, the word is getting out how dangerous these products are to premature infants. And so that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to stop this and inform the mothers out there of the dangers of these products.
What was happening in the hospitals that initially gave you concern that we might have something going on here?
Sean, the very first case, a mom called me who she said that her very premature infant, no one thought was going to live. The baby was very small, and the baby was given human donor milk from a milk bank, and actually survived and was thriving and doing very well. And then about 40 days in, they switched the baby to Similac, and Similac is a cow's milk based product, and that's really what the problem is with these formulas. And she said, as soon as my baby switched to the Similac, my baby got sick, got this horrible disease called necrotizing enterocolitis, or NEC for short. And they tried to do surgery on the baby's intestines to remove the dead bowel, and unfortunately her baby passed away.
Oh, man.
So, I mean, when I heard the story, I drove down to New Haven, Connecticut, and I met with her, and the story seemed so crazy. How could a food product fed to a tiny little preemie be dangerous? It just didn't seem to make sense. And I went back to my office and I started researching it, and there is an abundance of scientific peer-reviewed literature and articles out there that basically state that cow's milk formula significantly increases the risk of necrotizing enterocolitis, and mothers don't know of this horrible risk. It just gets fed indiscriminately to these children, and so many.
Is cow's milk a brand? If you keep saying cow's milk, I just want to drill down on that.
Right. So there's basically two brands. There's Similac, which is made by Abbott Labs, and there's Enfamil, which is made by Mead Johnson. And there's Formula and Fortifier, and they are both made from cow's milk. And unfortunately, it's the cow's milk that is the real problem. Human milk is safe. So mother's own milk or human donor milk is very, very safe for the premature infant. But the premature infant cannot handle cow's milk.
And I'm going to use your shortening phrase, NEC, for the disease we're talking about. What does it do? Describe the symptoms and what it does, and then talk about what the path to recovery looks like for someone, an infant that has been diagnosed with it.
Well, this necrotizing enterocolitis is just the most horrible disease. The cow's milk causes a bacteria to grow in the walls of the intestines, and if they don't catch it quick enough and they keep feeding the formula, the bacteria grows, ends up perforating the bowels. The baby gets septic, gets an infection throughout their whole body. They have to go into these tiny little babies and try to surgically remove the dead intestine, the dead bowel. And unfortunately, many times these babies pass away, or they get septic. They can have cerebral palsy as a result of this. The injuries are devastating, and I mean, quite frankly, it's been going on for decades, and it's got to be stopped. And that's what we're all here for today.
The tragedy here also is a lot of these mothers were just told your baby was premature, had some comorbidities or had some problems, and it died. But there's so much more to that, and they're not informed that the baby was doing well, even though the baby was premature. It's when the baby was given milk from a cow that has completely different enzymes, completely different proteins. And remember, premature babies have not had the luxury of being incubated for the 9 months, for the 40 weeks. So their linings of their intestines aren't completely formed. Their ability to fight infection is not complete because they're still growing. And they don't have a lot of the resources that a full-term baby will have to deal with the introduction of a new protein or a new enzyme. And the babies that are fed this formula most of the mothers don't know that they were given cow's milk to begin with. And Abbott and Mead Johnson have known for decades that a premature infant, a tiny baby that has all these immune issues because they're not fully formed yet, are susceptible to neck. And the injuries, if they live, are devastating. They have short gut syndrome, meaning they can't absorb nutrients when they eat. So they can't thrive. They can't develop cognitively. And you're watching what would have been a wonderful, beautiful baby grow up to be a wonderful, beautiful adult. That will never happen now. These babies can't walk, they can't talk, they can't eat. The most vulnerable babies, the most vulnerable people in our society are these infants. And they are giving these formulas to moms for free. They're giving them to hospitals with $400 gift certificates to promote their product that they know or should have known for years has been causing these devastating injuries.
Yeah, I just want to add that, the World Health Organization actually many years ago created a policy which direct advertising to consumers should not happen, because it's well known that when formula companies advertise to moms, particularly moms from minority communities, that it has a direct impact on lactation levels. So moms don't produce the very thing that God created, which is what the baby needs. The mom has it already, and so they've completely ignored that. The U.S. actually signed off on that, but then when they came home, a lobbying effort shut it down, so it was never legislated into law. So we're one of the few developed nations that allows direct consumer advertising to mothers. I want to share also just one of the clients that we represent. It's a tragic story, because to me it's one of the most disturbing aspects of this is how quickly it develops. We have a client right here in Florida, beautiful mother, a beautiful family. She had a premature infant, and she was a mother that was doing exactly what's supposed to happen. She was producing an abundant supply of her own milk, and the baby had grown to 3 times its original size. And one day, without her knowing, without her consent, she pumped before she fell asleep, went to bed, and overnight the baby was fed formula. Tragically, the next time she saw that baby, the baby had developed a full case of neck. The baby's intestines were outside of the baby's body, and that baby tragically died that next morning. We're talking about less than a 12-hour turnaround from the first time that baby got this stuff.
And the products are labeled human milk formula, and there's nothing human in that formula.
I'm going to ask a question that's a little bit off script. Who's to blame? The hospital for doing this, or for the companies after they know what is going wrong here, for them to continue to push it upon the public? Who are we going after?
The manufacturers of these products, period.
Why are hospitals allowed to give this?
Because they don't know.
Okay.
This is not widely disseminated information. These companies push their products. They push it to doctors. They push it to hospitals. They push it to new mothers. And the product would be safe if it was a full-term infant. But these are not full-term infants. These are the most, as we said, vulnerable in our society. And they're being exposed to really a poison, a toxin.
One of the things that is happening, and we're starting to get into the discovery on these issues, and we're going to learn a lot more, but Mead Johnson and Abbott, they actually give this stuff for free. So they give the Similac and the Enfamil for free to the hospitals for them to push this product. And the moms are never told that this food product could harm their babies. The labels have absolutely no warning that this product could cause necrotizing enterocolitis. They also give absolutely no instructions to the doctors or the hospitals on how to feed it, or when to feed it, or when to stop feeding it. frankly, I'm just shocked that unlike a prescription drug, if there was a prescription drug that was wreaking havoc like this, there would be big black box warnings. Everybody would know that it's dangerous, but that's not the case here because it's food.
You know, one of the reasons I became a trial lawyer was because of over the modern history of this country. It is trial lawyers who have filled in the gaps that regulatory entities leave. And so whether it's seatbelts, whether it is, product that are dangerous and all these things, it's lawyers that ultimately have to hold someone accountable because the government's been lobbied out of doing something about something, or the FDA doesn't want to do something. And it's lawyers that bring these cases, and ultimately that's what it's about. That's why I became a trial lawyer, because that is ultimately all of our calling, I believe, is why we do this. And I want to talk about the premature babies a little bit, and you can confirm this because it's true, I believe. Premature babies are most prevalent in mothers of color for various reasons, right? Mothers of color have health care disparities, that they don't get to the doctor as often as other mothers. They don't eat the same foods as other mothers. And there's various reasons that are why there are healthcare disparities in babies being born. And I could imagine that is traveling over as to who the victims of this might be. It is certainly premature babies and those mothers that are having them. And I can imagine what that means.
Right. The minority of, women that have babies that have neck, that have died, or that are seriously, forever, tragically injured, were never told what could happen. And probably this has been allowed to go on for decades because it mostly targets and injures the minorities.
How does someone know that they might be a victim or their child may have been a victim of specifically what we're talking about here today? How do they know?
Can I chime in on that? So,
yeah,
because it actually connects up. It's one of the reasons that this tragedy affects persons of color in a greater way is because many of the hospitals that are from more impoverished areas don't have access to donor milk. So we know what the solution is here. The solution is actually quite simple. If your baby is a premature infant, they should be fed either mom's milk if she's producing milk, or alternatively donor milk. And so donor milk is available, but not all hospitals carry it. And we find that hospitals from impoverished communities tend to have lower access to donor milk. It also is listen, I mean, this is a self-advocacy issue too. I mean, one of the reasons that we're here today is we want to empower the community to understand that you can demand this. You can say, you can ask ahead of time, does this hospital have donor milk? Do you have an abundant supply? Am I going to be able to get it? Do you have Prolacta, which is a human milk-derived fortifier, as an example? So there's alternatives. They're expensive, and follow the money is kind of one of those things that always seems to ring true. It is expensive, but these babies are entitled to the best medical care that we can give them.
Do you think, you were having a child, would you say that if the hospital said we don't have donor milk, would you make the decision not to go to that hospital to have the baby? Is it that serious?
Knowing what I know right now,
Yes.
if I had a premature
Yes.
infant, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that if my wife was not producing her own breast milk, I would be saying to her, we got to go somewhere where we can get donor
Okay,
milk.
well, and audience, if you didn't hear anything else that you've heard prior to that, the advocacy question that he told you to ask, if you are having a premature child or you're getting indications that might be the case, ask the hospital if they have donor milk, and if they don't, you need to make a serious decision about whether you think it's
Or
safe.
alternatively, if they don't have a donor milk bank accessible, ask for
Prolacta, sorry.
which is made from mom's milk, human milk, not cow's milk. It's more expensive.
If I ask the hospital, does your formula or what you're feeding my child have cow's milk in it? Are they going to know? Are they going to tell the truth? Are they going to say?
That's a very good question. They may not know themselves.
Bingo.
It says human milk formula on it, and a nurse that's going to be, transitioning the baby home maybe, and they want to get the baby out as fast as possible because they've been in the NICU too long. We'll just switch them to this formula, and they read it, and they may not even know themselves. And like Stephen said, there is no big black box warning that says, do not feed this to a premature infant, especially if the infant is fed enterically, which is a big fancy word meaning through the stomach, because little infants, little babies that are premature, they can't get the suck and the swallow at the same time. So you don't want them to choke. So you feed them through their tummy. And if you have a baby that's premature that needs to be fed through the tummy, you cannot feed that baby cow's milk. It is unsafe. It is dangerous. It is inherently dangerous. And these companies, they knew it.
Let me ask the question: how do I know I might be a victim, or my child might have been a victim of this? How do I? What if I'm someone that's listening to this show and I had a premature child, or I may be having one, or God forbid, there's been a tragedy and I maybe lost a premature child? How do I know that this might be related to what happened?
You know, after that very first case that I had, I started thinking that thought. I'm like, I'll bet mothers never know why their baby got necrotizing enterocolitis. No one ever told them that there's a link between the formula, the cow's milk formula or fortifier, and the necrotizing enterocolitis. So when Jose and I first started this law firm dedicated to the premature infants, we simply sent out a Facebook ad and said, basically, did your premature infant get necrotizing enterocolitis? That was basically the only question. And almost every single one of those cases that came in, we got the medical records and we discovered that those preemies were fed either Similac or Enfamil.
Wow.
Yeah, Stephen's always said, if the baby has neck, the baby almost certainly was fed formula. And so I was kind of chuckling internally because to me, if your baby is a premature infant and your baby is fed cow's milk formula, you're already a victim, in my opinion. You're already a victim to being given second best because the science knows very clearly that human milk for a premature infant who has no immune system, essentially, is what that baby absolutely needs. But some other, there's things that are early signs that maybe we should share, like if there's blood in the stool. And by the way, this expert right here knows medicine probably better than most doctors.
I've heard her describe other things.
I'm about to pass this on because
No, you're right.
so Liz can tell us more, but there's some early signs that
Early signs, abdominal, their tummy is distended, it bloats up, it fills up, with gas and things like that. They'll do a CT scan or an X-ray of the bowels, and you'll see something called dilated bowel loops, or there's free air in there. Things that aren't supposed to be in there are a precursor to what could be coming down the pike. If you're on top of it and you can stop the cow's formula immediately, give the baby a chance to survive over this neck, then they'll do better. But some of these signs with babies, premature babies, are naturally occurring anyway. So you look for abdominal distension. You're looking for a fussy baby, a baby that's vomiting, a baby that is not tolerating the formula, a baby that has pain. These babies have pain. Just because they're immature as far as their development doesn't mean that they don't feel pain. When they remove their intestines completely out of their body to try and clean out that cavity where all their poop and all that infection is, and they leave the guts out for days, hoping that the swelling and infection can go down so they can put it back in. These babies, it happens fast. It cascades very quickly. This child that Jose was talking about in Florida, 12 hours after being given cow's milk, got a terrible
And this
case
is
of
not
neck
just a Florida thing.
and diagnosed.
Right?
Sir,
Obviously nationwide.
this is sold. This product is sold everywhere. And so those are what you look for: a fussy baby, a baby that appears in pain, baby that's spitting up. Sometimes they vomit blood and then their intestines don't work at all. There are no bowel sounds. And then they get blockages and it has nowhere to go, this buildup of infection. And that's when it perforates outside of the intestines. And then these babies will never be able to ingest food like we do. They can't get their nutrients from the food they even eat. And so cerebral palsy, you'll start seeing brain bleeds. Why? Because they become septic. That infection gets in their blood and it goes everywhere.
If I am listening to this show and I believe that somehow I've got questions, number one, or I believe that my child or myself or someone I know has been a victim of this, who do I call? Who can I talk to answer my questions and give me some guidance? What's the contact information? Who do I call?
You can call both of our firms. We are both working collaboratively together as co-counsel on these
Can you give me a phone
horrific
number?
cases. Yes, sir. Our number here at Suoperdante is 813-273-0017. Again, 813-273-0017. I would also like to give my cell phone number out. It is 727-424-4079. It's not something that we usually do, but in this instance, I think it's vitally important that if you have questions, you get answers. So my number again is 727-424-4079. Ask for Liz. Ask for my partner, Mindy, Savannah. Anyone on our team is willing to help. And I know with Stephen and Jose, with their firm, they're also very active in answering your questions and taking your calls. And if you even have a question, call. We don't believe that there's anything as a stupid question here when it comes to the health of your family, of your child, because this doesn't just take down the baby. This affects the entire family dynamic.
Give me your contact information, guys, if you have.
Anyone can call my cell phone directly. So my name's Stephen M. Reck, and my cell phone's 860-961-0508. And unfortunately, I've spoken to literally hundreds of moms who've had preemies that have had this horrible disease, and they can call my cell anytime, or they can send me a text. And if I can't pick up, I promise you it's very important to me, and I will get back to them right away.
We're getting towards the end here, but I want to end on the questions that, and we already talked about this, but I want to end on it again because it's important. If I'm a mother or a father for that matter, and about a premature baby, or I believe I might be on the road to having a premature child, what questions am I asking the hospital about this formula? What am I asking specifically?
You're asking whether or not they have breast donor milk available, because a lot of mothers that give birth to preemies don't start that full lactation yet. Some are very fortunate and do, but most unfortunately don't. So if they don't have donor milk available, a milk bank available, then ask that your baby never be given anything with cow's milk. No formula with cow's milk, no Similac, no Enfamil, and then use Prolactic, because that does not contain cow's milk. It contains human milk. It's a human milk derivative.
Prolactic is okay. Donor milk is okay. Mother's milk obviously is
best.
okay. But I do not want products with cow's milk in it, and that's Similac, and what's the last one?
Enfamil. And be careful. If you want, look at the formula itself. If it says human milk fortifier, that doesn't necessarily contain human milk at all. In fact, it contains cow's milk. So don't be misled by the labeling that we feel is incredibly misleading, not just to the moms, but to
what's scary about this is what you said. The staff and the hospital might not even know that there's cow's milk in there, and that connection between the cow's milk and NEC is scary stuff.
Abbott doesn't talk about how their product is dangerous. Abbott talks about how their product can put weight on an underweight infant, how I can get your infant to bulk up and get that infant home. And then once the infant is home and they reach that desired weight, then you can use this Similac formula or this Enfamil formula. Stay in the family. And it's that hook, that marketing hook. They don't market to hospitals. Do not give this cow's milk formula to any premature baby. They don't say that. They say, here, it's for free.
Well, this is important. I thank you all for coming all the way from Connecticut too, to be on this show. I think we're going to do some more segments on this, because I can already envision people are going to have questions about this, have follow-ups about this, and this is the most important thing in their life. It's their child, and it's their vulnerable premature child that something may have happened to, or they're scared may happen to, or they just want to have their questions answered. So thank you for coming on. We'll do this again. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Vanguards of Democracy is funded and produced by Vanguard Attorneys, a local personal injury law firm serving the Tampa Bay area with ingenuity and an indomitable work ethic. Don't forget to follow Vanguards of Democracy on YouTube or download episodes on your favorite podcast streaming services like iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And lastly, we're excited to announce that we're launching our new landing page, www.vanguardsofdemocracy.com, where you'll be able to ask questions, recommend guests or topics, and stay up to date with news and announcements. It'll be great. If you know how to bookmark a website, this is the one that'll make it worth it. Thank you.